to Thursday Night Talk. This is a show where we discuss the week in Humboldt, local issues, and the local personalities with the local personalities. I'm Talby Freed, your local host for the next hour. At a recent town hall meeting, residents of Eureka's Highland Park neighborhood were seeking answers about the impending sale of the long-blighted Jacobs Middle School campus. They were sadly disappointed. Why was it necessary for Eureka City School to do this backroom deal? What will be the ultimate fate of this property, and how will it affect area residents? Were they owed a voice and seat at the table when this deal was cut? Can they demand one now? Well, we've got a crew for you to help us figure out those questions. Maybe they have some answers, maybe not. Maybe we'll have more questions by the end of this. That's cool too. It's a discussion here on Thursday Night Talk. Joining us, we've got Eureka City Councilperson Katie Moulton. Welcome.
Hello.
We've got Amy Jester of SENA. SENA is South Eureka Neighborhood Alliance. So welcome, Amy. Brian Payton, also with SENA. So for those who are going to be hearing SENA throughout the show, that means South Eureka Neighborhood Alliance, which is where all of this is taking place. An invitation to Eureka City School Superintendent Gary Stortz was extended. It went unanswered, as so happens on this show when we reach out. I heard Arkley did make a comment to another news outlet that he doesn't know anything about this, and he's very happy he doesn't know anything about this. So we didn't even bother asking Arkley. Though that's very suspicious, Arkley. That's very suspicious that you even made that comment. So let's get into this. Also, if you have any texts throughout the show, call or text 707-498-4146. That's 707-498-4146. If you want to text about any of this, ask any of our panelists questions, ask me questions, etc., etc. So I'm gonna just lowball this one, pretend nobody knows anything. So what exactly is going on here? There's a school, there's a house, somebody wanted to buy the school.
I think we can go back even a little bit further than that. Eureka City Schools had the Jacobs campus property, which was a school. And then, there was less students. They shut it down. They were doing adult ed there. It was used less and less and less. And then over the years, eventually got to be used none at all and became an empty blight on the neighborhood. And that is when I was introduced to the South Eureka Neighborhood Alliance. Maybe I can throw it over to some of them to tell the story from there.
Yeah, and about, I think it was 2017 or 2018, there was another town hall. 2018, there was another town hall that was actually held at the auditorium at Eureka High, and it was about the Jacobs campus and what should be done with that space. And a lot of neighbors were there, other folks that had some connection to the community. And a bunch of us talked afterward and decided to come together to see if we could organize with our fellow neighbors, community members, other interested parties, and allies to see what might be possible with this amazing property. It is a little over 14 acres, a site in total, and as Councilmember Moulton noted, has been increasingly, I don't know, laying fallow, falling apart, has been fairly ignored, I would say, by Eureka City Schools for a long time. And so the neighbors were really interested in figuring out what could be done. And so advocated pretty significantly with Eureka City Schools just to have the buildings torn down. There were folks that were camping out, kids were skating on the rooftops of the old buildings. It was a bit of a danger for those children, and just wanted to support Eureka City Schools in taking a step forward to take action of some kind. So once those buildings were torn down, I think the neighborhood was really excited about that. and has since been advocating with Eureka City Schools for them to take the next step in selling the property. I think Eureka City Schools for some time has identified that, you know, they want to, had been wanting to hold on to the property as an asset in case the Eureka City Schools population grew to a point where they needed to build a new school and have property to do so, and needed to get to a certain price point on the sale in order to actually make it worth it to them to give up that property for that potential future use down the road. You know, because they wanted to make sure that they were being good financial stewards of the Eureka City Schools, and if they were able to get a certain price point, that they would sell it in order to have that funding go back into supporting Eureka City Schools. So it was a great surprise when it was announced without much notice that there was a potential deal that was being reached with a mysterious potential purchaser, and it seemed like a real 180 in terms of the conversations that we'd been having with Eureka City Schools about their interest in selling the property, who they could even sell the property to. For a long time, we were trying to work with Eureka City Schools, the city of Eureka, see if any developers were interested to come up with a creative solution for what that property, the potential for it could be. And so it was a surprise, needless to say, when the announcement was made that that this was going to be agendized at that recent Eureka City School Board meeting.
I could just jump in. There's, you know, one kind of probably 4-year step in there where Eureka City Schools and the city of Eureka and the CHP were all talking. So the schools owns this chunk, and the city of Eureka needed a new place to put their corporation yard, which is where, you know, heavy equipment and vehicle working and things like that. Not the prettiest thing to plop in the middle of a neighborhood. Fortunately, it only needed a certain amount of the footprint. So if the city were to buy it, they would be able to take on all of it and include things like a community center and you know, other things around the courtyard that might make it fit better into a neighborhood. The city's highest bid was rejected in favor of the CHP. And according to survey data from SENA, including from like me when I moved into the neighborhood, lots of people were very much in support of seeing more law enforcement in the neighborhood and thought CHP might mitigate some of the problems that were you know, existing on the site. Although I'd say a lot of the problems had to do with the fact that it was a blighted, empty building and not necessarily where it is. It was just that the site itself was a problem. So when the city of Eureka stepped out, it looked like the CHP was going to be purchasing it. They came up here and, well, they're here already, but they sent some representatives and had a big public meeting over at Fort Humboldt to answer questions and meet people and let us know that they wanted to engage with the people in the community to help make the CHP facility fit in. And it seemed like that's what we were working towards. Like at that point, it's like, okay, I'm meeting with the CHP, you know, we're the city is, we're trying to just, you know, make sure that whatever we can control about how the compound fit into the slot there, that we could make it as pleasant for the neighborhood as possible and as safe as possible. And then, like Amy says, all of a sudden, poof, on a like suddenly agendized item. And the rule there with the public agency or with the surplus land from the schools is that they have to try to sell it for the public, to a public agency first, which is why they were talking to other schools first, and then to the city, and then to CHP, because they had this obligation to try and sell it for, you know, something that's going to end up being for the public good, for public service. But the Surplus Land Act has an exception when you are trading rather than selling. So this deal was able to be done, by my understanding, because it was a trade for a house, for workforce housing and some money. And there's a legally required proportion of the value and the money and things like that. And then it has, it was voted for, and there it is now. It's on the books there in escrow. I would point out that the deal has not closed yet with the supposedly secret developer. And there's I would say at this point, still lots of different things that could potentially happen.
I do have something to say though.
Yes.
I want to go back just in true fashion form. Eureka City Schools is known. I need to say this so that the viewers can hear this. And I think a lot of people in the neighborhood couldn't agree, and parents out there, that in true fashion, Eureka City School are not up in front and honest about things. Even the last time when Amy was talking about when they had the town hall meeting, it was actually brought together by Rex Bone, actually. Eureka City Schools didn't want to do it. And they didn't even want to post anything about it. It was barely even known. Everybody was scrambling to get to that meeting, including myself. I was at that meeting. And that's one thing I want to say. Another thing I want to say is that the mystery part, I think a lot of neighbors that are talking about, and that even has me questioning, is whether, like, how did the deal go down? Did they go back to CHP and say, hey, this person's bid? Was it a bidding war? Nothing's been discussed, because I would think that if you're offering somebody a deal and you're doing this in good faith, you would have gone back to CHP and say, well, this person's bid, can you do more? But I think it caught off guard CHP, according to their spokesperson, Matt Harvey, that he didn't know anything about it. And I think the trading, I don't know the law, but if you're trading for something, even the landowner, how is he involved of that property? Because of just kind of like they're buying it, the house, or trading the house. But what involvement? He acts like there was no, according to what he said, statement in the, I believe it was North Coast Journal, Lost Coast, that he wasn't fully aware of what's going on, other than about the property being traded. So there's a lot of unknown answers or unknown questions that many people have in the neighborhood, and there's just a lot of confusion. This shouldn't be like this.
Yeah. So there was a question that I feel like we kind of covered it, that came in through a text, which is, doesn't ECS have an obligation to be transparent about sales? And that was kind of covered a little bit. Yes, they do. Though, Katie, you or Council Member Moulton, you had
Just feel free to call me Katie, Talbot. You go right ahead.
Okay. All right. You had said a supposedly mysterious purchaser. You didn't say mysterious.
Just that
you said supposedly.
No, just that
so I'm like, do we have any clues on who this is? And
I
why
mean,
is that
it's a company that's represented by a lawyer, and the lawyer is on the record, and everybody, lots of people have guesses. I'm not going to guess. I mean, it doesn't. If somebody is, excuse me?
We know who the lawyer is that's representing this.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a human involved, at least, and there's a business involved. So it's a legal entity. I'd say supposedly mysterious, just because I know everybody has guesses. But I don't think it's, I'm not going to guess, because I don't think it's super useful to try and guess at this point. The purchaser will become known when they try to do something. They want to build something there. If the deal actually closes and goes through, and hallelujah, Eureka City Schools gets, close to $6 million, that would be a real boon. That would be really great for the school district. And then that property developer would be in a position of building what it sounds like most people want, which is housing.
Now, I do have a question, Katie.
Yeah.
Do they really have to be known? Because if they just leave like as it is, as an entity, if that's all they say on the record, we're going to build here, but we're not going to let ourselves know, can they legally do that?
But first, not a lawyer.
Right.
And I definitely am not super familiar with the way like corporate law and property law work on that scale. But my understanding is that, if it's a legal entity with a representative, they would be that person could be the one who, say, came before council and requested a zoning change, or pulled permits, but when big things like this get developed, there's usually lots of conversation. There's lots of back and forth between multiple entities to work stuff out, and all, pinning down to like one representative just seems impractical to me. Like if this is really going forward, if they're really going to build something and something's really going to happen, ultimately, I don't think legally they have to come out of the shadows or make themselves known, but functionally, I mean, pragmatically,
Well, sometimes
why
when
wouldn't
I've
they?
looked up stuff or even heard stuff in the past, I feel like when you have corporations that are under an entity, I mean, you see their name, but you really don't know who they are. I mean, there's
Oh
so
yeah,
many
they can act.
things
A
out there.
corporation can for sure act like as a legal, just as legal as
I mean,
a person, for
even on
sure.
the internet, it's when you're looking at something, it's even hard to find people's board of directors, like who's behind certain things in companies. If this is some entity, well, they just they started, but they don't really want to come. I mean, I would think as the get-go, being up front would be like, hey, this is who we are, but it doesn't seem like they're ready to say who they are, which is not a good move, I don't think, and the neighbor doesn't think so either.
They're clearly not saying who they are. Yeah,
No.
and why the lack of upfront, why the lack of transparency with that? I don't know. I mean, you can spin suspicions or guesses.
Yeah, the paper's already done that.
Yeah. my I, I tend to try and focus just me and my job as a council member on what we can do and what can go forward. And I don't want to just totally dismiss people's concerns about a lack of transparency in such a big transaction involving the public good, and involving public resources. I don't want to dismiss any of that because that's all totally irrelevant. The Brown Act is the floor, not the ceiling. The required transparency should be where we start, not the minimum as public officials that we meet because we have to. I mean, if you want a functioning democracy, you need an engaged public, and that means being not just being transparent to the amount you're required, but really actively, putting stuff out there and talking to people and publishing and discussing and seeking input. And that's just from like a colleague point of view, just like from a peer point of view. I find that a really valuable part of the process. I'm disappointed as someone in the neighborhood to not have seen that. And going forward, what can we do? What can happen from here? What can't happen from here? And what control do the people have, the citizens of Eureka, the neighbors in the second ward, acting on their own or through the city government? Like what can we do to make sure that whatever does end up happening there is beneficial to the neighborhood and beneficial to the city as a whole?
So that's kind of a good spot with all those questions that we'll get to those right after this quick break. You're listening to Thursday Night Talk.
I feel like we're doing the 80s thing. That little 80s music going on.
Welcome back to Thursday Night Talk. We are discussing the rather curious case of the Eureka City Schools exchanging the Jacob Middle School campus for a tiny shack, and it does look like a tiny shack. No offense to anybody who lives in a house. It's probably bigger than where I live, but it is a tiny shack, and $5.6 million for the entire campus. Underneath, and it feels like it maybe it isn't underneath, but it feels like underneath CHP and the city of Eureka. And we're discussing that. We have council member, Eureka City Council member Kati Moulton, Amy Jester, a representative of the South Eureka Neighborhood Alliance, aka SENA, as well as Brian Payton, also with SENA. And we were discussing kind of the history of it and how it happened, and kind of some of the legalities, though none of us seem to be lawyers here. Some of the legalities were discussed about how this could happen, because I think a lot of people had that it's a curiosity, like how do you go underneath CHP and the city of Eureka to be able to make this deal when there were other deals that people were obviously more for, and we discussed that. So if you didn't catch that, go back and rewatch this on our YouTube channel. Just look up Thursday Night Talk and you'll be able to see this. We also replay tomorrow, Friday at 8 p.m. on KZZH 96.7 FM, which you're listening to. So, Katie, before the break, you had asked a few questions, which, what does a deal like this mean for the city of Eureka? In some ways, like what's the future of the second ward in Eureka now after this deal isn't even closed? So this is kind of hypotheticals that I feel like everybody's living in. It seemed to me that it upset a lot of people that this even occurred, and I'm not sure the whole just of the anger from people who live by there. It sounds like I'm not sure the history of the public dealing with this, other than, okay, it was a school, there were happenings there, it kind of got run down, and there was hope for it to become something, and now it may become something that people are not sure about. Am I right there?
Before you respond, Council Member Moulton, I would like to share that from the neighbors that I've talked with, it hasn't been as much like anger, more just like suspicion and concern about like what the intention is, if this is something that's actually really going to move forward to some kind of development, or if this is going to be some situation that just gets caught up for whatever reason in a lack of activity, where the property just continues to sit in its current post-apocalyptic state. So I think it's been more of just a concern about nothing happening, and in some way like the site being used as a pawn for something that we're that people aren't aware of. So I think that's been the biggest thing, is like, what's really going on here? How might we get some answers? And Councilmember Moulton hears from far more people, so she may have heard a little bit of the anger. But I think from my point of view, and when prior to the town hall, which thanks so much, Councilmember Moulton, for your leadership and working with city staff in that awesome event. One of our SENA planning group members who lives just adjacent to the property called and texted a whole bunch of neighbors to help get them out to that event. I think like she heard a lot of concern and just like questions, unanswered questions from our neighbors. So what else would you add to that, council member?
Actually my connection went fuzzy right at the beginning of your question, Tally. Could you just paraphrase the beginning of that again? Why are people mad? Is that what you're
Pretty
asking?
much. Why are you so mad, everybody? That kind of question.
Yeah, no, I'll reflect what Amy said. I think people are more concerned about what's going to happen next. Anytime there's there's a certain amount of sort of cynical, like, oh, well, that's just a backroom deal. That's just how, things go. It's the good old boy network, or people kind of expecting things to be like shady or underhanded, and then they just kind of blow it off, which I find like cynical, like unfortunate. We need to hold people accountable. But I think more people are concerned that it's just going to continue sitting there, being a dumping ground, being a danger to the neighborhood. And that they, folks want to make sure that whatever is going to happen next, that they're going to get to have some say in it. Because it could be a lot of things. I mean, when we're talking about state agencies like Eureka City Schools or like the CHP even, they don't necessarily have to follow the zoning rules that the city puts in place over different properties to, so this part is a neighborhood and this is where our restaurants are and like that. But the CHP wouldn't have to follow those rules. So they could, for example, build much bigger buildings or build towers or build much closer to the edge of the street, or they wouldn't have to follow our rules about, planting trees or anything like that. So just making sure that I think sure where I was going with that, except that there's certain situations where the public has more control over what's going to happen on the lot and certain situations where they don't. In the situation where it is a private developer who has purchased it for property or for profit and is intending to develop there's a private entity, they would have to follow the rules. They would have to follow the zoning restrictions that are in place on the property, which is currently zoned as public service. And weirdly, the whole property includes the 8.3 acres that is part of the deal, and then the soccer fields. But the sale that is pending would split the soccer fields off, so they would stay with Eureka City Schools. They would keep those fields. People love the fields, and the remaining 8.3 acres would be the part that's developed. And if it is indeed a property developer that does that, then we can help dictate things like the density of the housing that is there, or whether it's housing at all, whether it's housing or something else. And if it is housing, the density of it, and other things like open space and access to like walk through trails and stuff like that. So in a way, it going over to a private entity gives us a little more control, gives us as the public through your city government a little more control over what can or can't happen there. Which is why I actually proposed at the last city council meeting just this Tuesday, I requested a future agenda item for the staff to bring council a report on everything we heard at that really great town hall. And with the report to bring a recommendation for rezoning the campus along with the lot line adjustment. So that's what I was going to say about the lot lines. There's two lots there that are stuck together, and the line actually goes through the middle of the fields, weirdly. So that all kind of has to be adjusted. And then the fields would be one thing, and then we as a city council, I would like for the city council to go ahead and rezone the rest of the property to reflect what the neighbors want, what they decide. What everybody sat down at that town hall face to face, and there was a staff person at every table or in every group, and people were talking about their hopes and their fears and what they do and don't want to see there. And the staff captured all that, some of it recorded, some of it on paper, and they're all chewing through that right now. They're going to bring us a report, and they're going to base a zoning change recommendation on that for the Eureka City Council to vote on, so that whatever happens from here going forward, if that passes, whatever happens would stand on that ground. On the ground of community input. We're going to start with what the neighbors want. And then if the property developer wants a change, they have to start there and change it from that.
I do have a couple things I want to add to that. You guys were talking about the anger um, we all see different things prospectively, and because I'm a social media guy, I run SENA's Facebook page. I also run the page for Eureka Moose Lodge, so I'm always on the internet looking at things. A lot of it is spilled into social media and private conversation to where many, even on social media, I've caught different people saying they want all the board members out. They want to vote them all out. That's one of the angers, or even recall them all. That's how much, not just even in the neighborhood, but outside the city. And I've seen some people who liked them. Pretty prominent people have liked that comment, that are really well known. And another thing that there's been talk about possible investigation with the AG, the DA, the California Department of Ed to investigate all these things. Because did Eureka City Schools act in good faith? Was there a violation of the Brown Act? Those are you get kind of people talking about it. Did they do that? But you don't really get a full investigation. So I think there's people that have been talking about it and really saying, is this going to happen? Because if there was some kind of backdoor deals, most people want to say what it is, or anything, because Eureka City Schools made a statement that doesn't sit well with the neighbors. They said they went door to door talking to people about this. Their whole statement says, hey, we did our due diligence. And I'm going to say it, that was a lie. And many neighbors, even people who used to work for Eureka City Schools, who posted on our page publicly, two of them said, no, that did not happen, that actually live in the neighborhood. And I think that's when you have the communication breakdown, is when you're not telling the truth. The integrity's not there. And I feel like it's either a criminal matter, and if it's not a criminal matter, then it's morally wrong. And they need to be called out on this. And that's something that, that I've spoke with several people and talked to them about this, that how do we prevent this, from happening in the future anywhere in the city? And that's something I think eventually the city will probably look at, because they don't want to, nobody wants to go through this again. But going forward, what's going to happen, there is talk about some kind of investigation, but whether that's going to happen, we don't know.
And just to be clear too, it's just to note that it's, Eureka City Schools and not the city.
Yeah.
Thank you.
People mix that up, I think, quite a bit. And
I was just like, what do the
so I just
want to have to do with this? Because in a lot of ways, this is going underneath the council members too. It's not like a council member, any one of them was like, oh yeah, I'm behind that, unless they are, because there's a mysterious purchaser. But I'd be very
a lot of people
shocked.
confuse that. This Eureka, they think that Eureka City, it was Eureka City, the city of Eureka that owned the property. A lot of people thought that it was, and we had to tell them, and Katie had to tell them, no, we don't own the property. It's Eureka City School.
Yeah, people are like, tell us who it was. I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell you any more than you can read in the paper.
So a question did come in from a text message, and if the property becomes residential, what's the maximum density?
Currently, like I said, it's zoned public service, so there's not a residential zoning assignment on it yet. It would
Is this going to be like another gateway plan? You're cutting in and out, Katie.
Residential zonings are 1 or 2 or 3. Each one has its own different requirements about density. And it says my internet connection is unstable. Let me scoot up a little bit. But yeah, it would be either, there's 3 different possibilities of, well, there's lots of possibilities, but mainly if the city council looks at what the neighborhood came up with at the town hall, and the staff bases a recommendation on that, it sounds to me like it's not going to be crazy dense. I don't want to guess though, because they have all the actual data and they're going to bring us a recommendation. It sounded like folks were amenable to housing. They were also amenable to, not necessarily single family homes. But nobody wants a giant tower apartment block that just plunks down and doesn't really fit in, is bigger than anything else in town. That's the very vague impression I get, but we'll get more details as the staff choose through the actual data that they gathered. Then if the property developer comes to council and says, here's what we want to build, and we want it to be super duper dense, or we want it to be all single family homes, they're going to make that request, and they're going to have to make that case, and they're going to have to answer to the public input during that part of the process. There is also this ballot initiative that is out there. And if the ballot initiative passes, which will be on the ballot in November, and if the ballot initiative passes, part of that does put a zoning overlay on the Jacobs property, which includes a lot, allows for a lot of different uses, including R3, the highest level of density housing possible. In fact, it specifically reserves a chunk of it, I think 40% of the developable part as R3, which is, a lot. It's, it's our most dense potential area. But it also has uses for commercial, uses for public service. If you look at the ballot initiative, it kind of, the zoning overlay for Jacobs would incorporate multiple different zoning, like potential zones, all kind of put onto the property all at once. So really open multiple doors there, not just residential.
The only thing I want to say to add to the housing for all, it was interesting timing of when that initiative, they got the signatures, and we can't, I don't really want to speculate, but there is, speculation among the community and the neighbors that the timing of that and the sale, if people within that group somehow talk with Eureka City Schools, and maybe that's why there was this entity formed with nobody saying who they are. There has been speculation of that. I'm not speculating, but there's been talk in the neighborhood and in the community itself of the timing of all this and the lack of communication.
For those who are listening or watching and are like, where is this place? This is
the Jacobs campus?
Yeah, so it's the George C. Jacobs Junior High School on Google Maps. I'm looking at it now.
Street.
It's a few blocks
right
south of Winco and Happy Donuts for donut lovers. And
yeah, it's off Central on Allard.
Yeah, South Central and Allard.
It actually, it looks pretty decently sized.
It's the largest bit of it's the largest piece of open land in Eureka. It's the biggest spot we have. That's a blank slate. Although right now it is some rotting ruins that gets periodically filled up with garbage.
Lovely. Well,
it was to be fair, that the school did take it down. They did tear the building down, but the foundations remain, and it does still remain. Like there's a kind of dip in the middle. People still dump there.
So no matter what goes there, just to clarify, that anything that is built on there will have to be torn down and rebuilt, because if they took the foundation out and it's rotting. Is this correct?
The foundation is just a foundation, but yeah, no, whatever gets built there will have to start from the ground up. There's no like building to salvage. Okay.
Interesting. Do we know what the city is going to be doing with the shack that they're going to be, or not the city, sorry, the Eureka City Schools. Eureka City Schools, not the city of Eureka. What the Eureka City Schools are going to be doing with the shack, which I wonder how much that's worth. And that does have some property on it, I believe, some.
You keep saying it's a shack. It's like, I'm not trying to guess at the value of the house or defend this in any way, but it is a house. It's like a 3-bedroom house or something. It's they said, they said in their deal that they wanted to do it for to have it for workforce housing. I'm not gonna guess. I don't know.
Yeah, by all means,
That's what they said.
totally
We're
get
foreshadowing.
here. So let's quickly go into our break, and then maybe when we'll come back, we'll be like, what is this going to turn out to be? And we can just let our imaginations run wild, or not, and we'll actually discuss serious matters. We'll be back here on Thursday Night Talk. Welcome back to Thursday Night Talk. We are discussing the Jacob Middle School drama between the Eureka City schools, not the city of Eureka, the Eureka City schools trading which the deal has not been met, but trading the Jacob Middle School campus for, I guess, a 3-bedroom house, not a shack, and $5.6 million, which for the Eureka City schools, $5.6 million can be used. And so it's, though I know there are neighbors who are still upset about this, because the campus was going to go to I almost said CHP, the California Highway Patrol, which I'm just trying to reiterate for those just tuning in, could have helped make the neighborhood safer potentially, because the area has kind of been turned into a dumping ground right there because of the dilapidated state of the campus. And then it was taken from the city of Eureka, who could have had a corporate yard, community center. World was there, or that the school was there, the campus was their oyster for the city of Eureka had they been accepted. And so people are a little upset that a mysterious purchaser has come in and been like, have this house that looks like a shack to me, but here, have this house and $5.6 million, and I'm going to take this property, and who knows what I'm going to do with it. I'm not going to tell you until the deal's done, and then everybody in the city has to deal with it. So that's where we're kind of at now. We went into the history of things. You can re-watch the rest of this show, or all that you missed if you just tuned in tomorrow night, Friday, 8 p.m., KZDH 96.7 FM, same station you're listening to right now. Tune in to Access Humboldt over the weekend. We'll be playing this on channel 12 for cable fanatics out there as well. You can tune into YouTube, Access Humboldt, look up Thursday Night Talk, hours and hours and hours of Thursday Night Talk. I think about 2 days worth. You can just sit and listen to me. I know it's a dream come true. So I still do wonder, like, what is the potential, what is the actual, like, I'm not sure about this ballot initiative. You had mentioned it right before on the November ballot. Oh, and then somebody just emailed, wait. A local resident says the people he talked to were happy about the CHP coming to the site. That is what it sounds like, because
yeah,
I'm looking at the neighborhood. I too live in Eureka. I'm looking at the neighborhood, and I know it's a good neighborhood. I know that there are really wonderful people there. I will say it does have issues sometimes. So having a very strong police presence, it's kind of that broken windows thing. If there's a big dilapidated property there, a lot of terrible things can happen because people think they can get away with it, versus a CHP hub where you see a bunch of uniformed officered people who don't like broken windows.
Nobody's gonna go start a campfire in the CHP's front yard. That's for sure. Although
you underestimate Eureka.
It is. Yeah. I'm a firm believer that it's really resources and connections that keep community safe. I would, you know, I'd rather have block parties and after school care and, you know, neighborhood potlucks and things like that, where people are meeting each other and looking out for each other and helping each other. And that's what really keeps neighborhoods safe. You know, cop cars going through and driving past and people being afraid of police presence or afraid of, you know, the enforcement of the law, like that's legit. But when it comes to incidental crime or people feeling vulnerable, or you know, people feeling like they could get away with something somewhere, when your neighbors are watching, when people are out walking their dogs, when people are playing in the parks, when people are roller skating, like that is what keeps community safe, and that's what keeps that's what does keep our neighborhood safe. Where, you know, where that happens, it's safer.
And, you know, prior to the break, Councilmember Moulton noted that this is a very unusual property in terms of it being so large that there's a lot of potential and possibility for what could happen there. And I think one of the things that's unfortunate about the situation is that neighbors came together for some time really asking for Eureka City Schools to be a partner in imagining what else might be possible, and collaborating with the neighborhood on a potential like creative sale to a developer that could do really something really great, and have it be developed into the asset that it really is, so that we can be proud of that space as an entire community, not just for the neighbors that live around it immediately, but that we can feel like we as a community, when we have such critical space and land in a community where there's not a lot of developable land, that we do something amazing with it, and put it to its best possible use. But Eureka City Schools refuse to do that. And so to have this shift so quickly, I think that's part of what is really disappointing, is the lack of partnership with community to like make something really cool happen. So I just wanted to make a note about that. And now we can go to your question about the ballot initiative.
Can I say
Talby.
one quick thing for that? Just to add to that, Amy is correct on that note. And when I was communicating, because I was a direct communication with Frederick Zleck on what was happening with the neighborhood with the CHP. I was kind of liaison going back and forth. He stopped communicating with me, and I knew there was something that was up, and that was like late November, and they just stopped communicating with me, and I knew there was something brewing, and I was like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden the sale happened. That's the only thing I wanted to add to that.
It feels so shady. I think that's kind of the biggest.
Thank you for using. Thank you. That's the correct what everybody's thinking. It does. You're correct.
Yeah, it seems like that's. It just seems shady. And we can skip we only have 3 minutes till the round robin's going to start, so we can skip the ballot initiative. We'll have an election show later. Katie, you're welcome back, because I know that you're gonna, well, maybe depending, I forget what year it is. We'll see if you can be welcome back to that. I don't know if you're running or anything. Don't mention it to me.
Well, okay, real quick about the initiative, just one sec, is that they threw in the Jacobs campus on that, which was even kind of interesting that was even in the language. It's one thing if you're going to do housing for all, because I think everybody's housing for all. We want housing. Even the state of California, wants that. But when you throw in that thing like almost like they targeted the property, and it's like, why would you put that language in there? And I think that, and then who's behind it all is even crazy. And it's like, that's what's going to get people to say no because of who's behind it. And there was a list, of course, there was a list of people saying no. And that's just in itself, the language of they were targeting. Jacob was like, why are they wanting that property? And why are they pursuing that? And I was like, there's something going on. And
Okay, I
That's why
didn't
it makes
realize
it
this
more
was a city housing
suspicious.
crawl. No, let's talk about this initiative real quick. Katie, if you have any, if you have
Go
any,
for it,
I,
Katie.
I
real
just want
quick.
to make before Councilmember Moulton responds, you had made a comment, Brian, about like, of course we all want housing. I think it's important to note
Yeah.
that ballot initiative actually restricts housing and
Oh, you're right.
is an overt attempt to interfere with the city of Eureka's housing plans to ensure that we do have more affordable housing for
Sure.
all. So I think it's just important that that we're clear about that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Moulton.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So to answer the question why, so the ballot initiative, as Amy points out, would make it much more difficult to develop housing in or to follow the city's current plan to develop housing, which is lauded and sung praises of across the state. Like people are, it's aggressive, it's proactive, it's already behind the times because we are all already behind the times. We are in the middle of this crisis, not looking ahead at it, and we need to do something yesterday. And so Eureka has a very assertive plan going on. And the ballot initiative purports that if it passes, then housing could be developed at Jacobs, which is that's simply not true. There's no restriction on Jacobs besides its current zoning, like it's currently zoned public service. You can't build housing there now, but the city council can change that. The citizens can change that through their city council. A property developer can ask to have that changed through the city council. So there's no need to have a ballot initiative to change the zoning of the Jacobs campus. It's a piece that was put in there to my mind so that they could say, look, here's this really obvious solution. Why doesn't the city just build housing there? Well, the answer is that the city doesn't own the campus and therefore can't build anything there. So obviously we can't build housing there, and the city would never probably would never stop housing from being built in there. We want housing everywhere. We want people splitting lots, and the city has a mother-in-law unit financing program. The city is working to get housing, cram it in everywhere we can fit people, because we have folks that are living well beyond their means. We have people that we have families that are doubled and tripled up in houses. We have people taking up housing stock when they would much rather have an apartment, but there aren't any available. You know, we've got to loosen this whole situation up so that our town can grow in a way that is healthy, and so that our local economy can also grow.
Katie, so we are going to go into the round robin. Everyone gets 2 minutes. I'm going to let Brian start first. You are on mute currently, so unmute yourself, and then just so it's a minute or two, so you can have whatever you want to say, whatever you want people listening or watching on TV to take away with them. Brian, go for it.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I really feel like I was first. I want to say thank you, Katie, and thank you, Amy, for being able to show up today. We appreciate it for sure. And those out there listening, yeah, I think it's important to be involved in the neighborhood, and to be involved in the process. That's very important, and even to keep, pressing to find out who these people are that bought the property. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly what's going to go down with investigation, other than that there's been talk about investigations with Eureka City Schools and the deal behind that. This has been a lot of talk. But other than that, I really feel like that the neighborhood has gotten a raw deal when SENA has worked so hard to be communicating with the neighbors, communicating with the Eureka City Schools. I feel like a knife went in our back and the community's back. And that's something that needs to be said. It's like we made the effort, the city's made an effort, to be involved. And I feel like everybody got stabbed in the back. And that's pretty much what, and I'm kind of standing up for neighbors, not just myself, but really for neighbors who are vulnerable, that really don't know the process. I mean, that's pretty much it, you know. That's all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you for being on the show, Brian.
Yes, I do have to go, but thank you.
Yes, let's go on to Amy. You've got about 2 minutes to let people know whatever you'd like them to know and take away with them.
The South Eureka Neighborhood Alliance, if you're interested in getting involved, you can find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, and we do a lot of cool stuff like related to the Jacobs campus, advocacy around that, but also neighborhood cleanup events, some advocacy around improvements at Highland Park, just community building events, parties in the park, barbecues. So there's some really great things I think to know about that are happening in the neighborhood. A lot of people feel a lot of pride in where they live, have lived there for a long time and really love it. And so it is an active and engaged community. And if you live there and you're looking for ways to connect with others, let us know. We'd love to get you involved.
How would people find information on SENA if they are in the neighborhood?
You can go to Facebook, and we have a Facebook group. So just look for South Eureka Neighborhood Alliance, and you'll be able to connect with us.
Is there a way outside of Facebook for people in the neighborhood who don't have Facebook?
You can email me at amyjester333@gmail.com.
That works. That works. All right, Katie.
And then Amy puts together a lovely a newsletter, you know, that comes out when there's announcements and things. So she'll email the South Eureka Neighborhood Alliance folks.
Nice. So Katie, you've got a couple minutes to let people know, and I feel like you're not the representative of City of Eureka, but you kind of are here because you're the only one who happens to be an elected member from City of Eureka that's here today. So,
yeah.
So whatever you'd like to say to everybody who's curious about this or has thoughts on this, or you know, whatever you want people to take with them, no pressure.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, there's clearly a lot of stuff that is still up in the air until the deal closes one way or the other, until something, you know, happens. Then I feel like at this point, people just need to stay engaged. Getting involved with SENA is a really great start. The city has an informational page on the website for the Jacobs campus that comes with a mailing list. So the city has like topic specific mailing list. So you can go get on the Jacobs campus mailing list and get an email every time anything happens, whether that's a vote that's coming up, something coming before council, or, you know, just news. And the staff will put stuff out there. There's also Talk Eureka, which is the city's forums page where people can go and talk. And it's a moderated forum where you can ask questions. The staff reads it. They actually answer questions on there. You can express your opinions, can vent about lack of transparency or daydream about the fact that you want a planetarium there. Because that was my favorite suggestion out of the town hall, the planetarium.
I vote for that.
What? No, we can't have a planetarium. It's too foggy. Giant dog park. No, it can't be a dog park. But people can share their ideas there. Talk Eureka on the City of Eureka's website is a great place. So just because it's not done yet, stay paying attention. Keep your eyes on the situation because it's gonna change. And the ballot initiative that is coming up, the Housing for All initiative, would affect the Jacobs campus as well as the rest of Eureka. If you're concerned about Jacobs and the future of Jacobs, please go read everything you can about that. There is a pro-initiative site, the Housing for All. I'm sorry, I don't have the web address in front of me, but if you search for Housing for All Eureka, you'll find their site. And then there's also an opposition website, I Like Eureka Housing. If you search for that, you ought to find them. You know, and you can just get a really clear picture about what the ballot initiative actually does, especially at the Jacobs campus, where it opens a lot of doors and removes a lot of potential for community input and for community control over what is happening with the largest plot of open land in Eureka. And I think we need to keep our seat at the table.
Yeah. Why can't we have a planetarium that can be rented for parties?
It's too foggy, Tavi. We live on the coast.
I know we have stars out here, but sometimes it's cloudy and rainy, and I want a planetarium. Thank you so much to my guests today. That is all for today's episode of Thursday Night Talk. We've got Kati Moulton, Eureka City Council member. Thank you so much for being on the show. Amy Jester from SENA, South Eureka Neighborhood Alliance, as well. Brian Payton, also from SENA, as well as, I forgot his union number, but that was cool. He had it on his thing. So if you watch our videos, you'll be able to see which union he's in. Go unions. I mean, I didn't say that. I did say that. I'm not a reporter. I don't have to have integrity. I just host a show. If you have topics or suggestions for the show, please email us at kzzh@accesshumboldt.net. Reminder, the show replays on KZZH 96.7 FM Friday evenings at 8 p.m. You can also watch this show on Access Humboldt's YouTube channel. You can search Access Humboldt. You can find Thursday Night Talk, and there will be hours and hours and hours of me talking to your favorite locals, some of your least favorite locals, even better sometimes depending on your mood. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. You're all welcome back. I hope more clarity comes out about the Jacobs Middle School. It's a weird situation. I'll see everybody, or you'll hear me next week right here on Thursday Night Talk. Woo!